I'm Stephen Harper. Welcome to Gospel Tangents.
It's the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. Early Mormon apostle Orson Pratt may be the most influential person in keeping the institutional memory of Joseph Smith's first vision alive. He was the one that coined the term first vision. We're going to talk more about his outsized influence on the entire church with Dr. Stephen Harper. He's the author of The First Vision, Memory in Mormon Origins, and we'll talk more about Orson Pratt, as well as some ancient and modern critics' views of the first vision now. So you won't want to miss this episode. Check it out. Okay, so let's wrap this up with a few other things. Just wanted to talk a little bit about Orson Pratt and how he influenced institutional memory. Yeah. So can you talk about him especially, and George A. Smith, and anybody else you want to talk about?
I think it's likely that if not for Orson Pratt, we would have a much diminished memory, collective memory, as Latter-day Saints, of Joseph Smith's first vision. He is the foremost selector and relator and repeater of the vision, to use the technical terms that Thomas Anastasio and his colleagues use for the people who choose what we remember, right? That happens because someone selects it, someone repeats it often, and relates it to other important components of our shared story. Nobody did that like Orson Pratt did that in the middle of the 19th century. He got the story from Joseph Smith's own mouth. Right, Orson Pratt heard Joseph tell his first vision on his way to Scotland on his mission. Joseph was on his mission to Washington, D.C. to seek redress for Missouri grievances. He and Orson Pratt crossed paths in the Delaware River Valley. Orson learns the story from Joseph. He writes it in a missionary pamphlet in Scotland. That circulates all over the globe. Orson, ever after, tells that story. He tells the first vision often. He tells it early. He coins the term first vision, as far as we can tell. It's in his writing in 1849 that those two words are used together for the first time in the historical record. And throughout the mid-decades of the 19th century, other church leaders are not telling the vision nearly as often, and they're not telling it in the same way. Even though Joseph Smith's records now, they've been published in the church newspaper. They'll be published, Joseph Smith's history will be published in the Pearl of Great Price in Britain in 1851, and it'll be canonized in 1880. But in that 30 years, you find quite remarkable variations on the story from George A. Smith, John Taylor, Brigham Young, and others. So it's Wilford Woodruff It's Orson Pratt who tells the story pretty much the way Joseph tells it, and repeats it and keeps it on the forefront of minds, and finally then it gets canonized, and we remember it the way we remember it today, largely because of the work that Orson Pratt did.
Yeah, he was church historian
for part of that time in the 1870s.
He's also the one who first published the Pearl of Great Price, which included...
That's Franklin Richards.
Oh, that was Franklin Richards. Okay.
Franklin Richards in 1851, as president of the British Mission, selected and put he selected the contents of the Pearl of Great Price.
I conflated my memory there.
You and me and everybody else.
All right. So we can really thank Orson for kind of the modern telling, because it wasn't really... Without him, it might not still be as published, as well known. Is that true?
I think that's likely the case, yes. I think that's likely the case. And it's Milton Bachman, really, who figured that out. I don't want to pretend to own that research. It's Milton Bachman who realized from his research that Orson Pratt played that key role. I built on Professor Bachman's research, like I've built on Professor Allen's and others, but he was the one who originated that argument.
All right, so I know in the last part we've talked a little bit about Wesley Walters. I know what caught my attention last night as I was leafing through the book is you had mentioned there was a podcast with John DeLynn on Mormon Stories and had Sandra Tanner. What are the things from that podcast? I guess you watched. I actually haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and watch it. But what are the things that you think they got wrong, or you take issue with the most as they tell the stories of discrepancies with the first vision?
Well, the fundamental thing is simply a different choice about how to interpret Joseph, right? Sandra Tanner knows her facts. She's actually pretty judicious about her facts, right? She and her husband, late husband, were pretty careful over time. They didn't exaggerate facts or try to sugarcoat things or hide things. So I admire that about her. But the fact of the matter is, she chooses a hermeneutic of suspicion. She's skeptical of Joseph Smith. He can't be telling a true story if the version of Christianity that she has chosen is true. Same with Wesley Walters, right? So the difference between my choices and hers are simply different versions of Christianity. And that means that we have different views about whether we can trust Joseph Smith or not. So we read the same documents, we know the same facts. And John Dehlin, interestingly, has sort of migrated, right? He started out with a hermeneutic of trust in Joseph Smith, and then over time he's migrated to a position of extreme suspicion. He no longer believes that Joseph can be trusted in his first vision accounts, and that's really the reason that he and Sandra Tanner were eye to eye on that particular episode of Mormon Stories, and probably why he wanted to hear her voice on that anyway and feature her, because she represented that hermeneutic of suspicion. I don't know what he's believing at this point about Christ or whatever else, but he wanted to feature that distrustful or skeptical interpretation of Joseph.
And so that's your biggest issue, is just you're a believer, they're not. We're going to look at facts differently just based on our point of view.
Yeah,
is that
I wouldn't call it an issue, right? That's just the way it is. A question might be asked: well, why do two people who know the same facts, study the same historical records, come to such dramatically different conclusions? It's because historians aren't endowed with some godlike capability of knowing. They only know the same facts that anyone else can know, and then they just interpret the facts. And their interpretations are necessarily dependent on their biases and prejudices and choices, faith commitments, or lack thereof. Right? So some people are under the impression that, that's the facts of the matter that turn the tide. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. I mean, the editors of the Joseph Smith papers are believers. They know all the facts. Dan Vogel, right? Sandra Tanner, they know the facts. Everybody invested in this knows the facts, reading the same documents, the same evidence. I've had really wonderful exchanges with Ann Taves, who knows the facts well, studies them really carefully, and arrives at different interpretations than I do. And it's not that one of us knows the evidence better than the other. It's that we just make different choices about what the evidence means.
Well, great. Well, is there anything we've missed in your book that you'd like to share?
No, I really appreciate you paying attention to it. It's gratifying to me. Sometimes wonder if anybody will care. My mom bought a copy, and I think maybe a few other people have. But
well, I bought a copy.
Perfect. I've been waiting for it to hit the New York Times bestseller list, and so far it hasn't climbed the list. But so it's gratifying to have your interest and attention to it. I appreciate it.
Well, great. Well, Stephen Harper, thank you so much for being here on Gospel Tangents. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Stephen Harper. Steve, thanks for letting me come over to your home and sharing the conversation about the first vision. I thought it was awesome. So thanks again, and I encourage you to go out and buy his book, The First Vision, Memory and Mormon Origins. In our next conversation, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Casey Griffiths. He's also a BYU professor and was recently released as bishop. A lot of people think that bishops don't know anything about church history, and so it was pretty surprising to me to hear some of the field trips that they did in his ward while he was serving as bishop.
I think that more bishops and church leaders should embrace church history.
Yeah.
Because one of the great things is, especially if you live in the United States, you're not too far away
Right.
from some kind of church history site. And you can use that as a way to kind of introduce difficult topics, bring up stuff that sometimes causes confusion or faith crises, and help them navigate those things while they're teenagers. I mean, we take 11-year-olds to the Mountain Meadows Massacre site and things like that. And you just kind of introduce church history as this rich tapestry that has its ups and downs and its lights and darks. And I think that prepares them for when they make the transition into adulthood. And a lot of people have faith issues then.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, sign up at patreon.com/gospeltangents, and for $5 a month you can hear the entire interview without any interruptions. If you'd like to see the whole video, that's just $8 a month, and you can sign up either at youtube.com/gospeltangents or on our website at gospeltangents.com and click the yellow subscribe button. Or you can go to patreon.com/gospeltangents, and I'll just need to make sure that we're Facebook friends, and I'll add you to our insiders group, and you can see the entire interview uncut. If you'd like to get PDF transcripts of our interviews, those are just $10 a month. And for just $15 a month, I will send you paperback versions of our transcripts as soon as they come out. Or, of course, you can buy them on Amazon as well. Go to Amazon.com and do a search for Gospel Tangents interview, and you can see all of our transcripts there. Don't forget to sign up for our updates at Facebook.com/GospelTangents. Of course, you can follow us at Gospel Tangents on Twitter. To hear our interviews updated to your podcast player, go to tinyurl.com/GospelTangents, and make sure you give us a 5-star review. And of course, you should show your support for Gospel Tangents with one of these cool t-shirts, like this green one, or light blue, sport gray, royal blue, purple, of course black, beautiful gold, and of course Utah red. I probably left out some colors, but if you want to see more, go to gospeltangents.com/shop, and you can get one of these. So once again, thanks for listening. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here we've got some more of our great videos. Thanks again.